And so, yes, we have raised $600,000 through more than 5,000 donations. And we have, just many thousands here in the district, but also we have donations from all 50 states and from Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. The demands that we are running on are extremely popular. I mean, look at the context we're running in, right? The New York Times Siena poll that was just released showing a deepening, an even more deepening disillusionment is what they say in the two parties. And the Democratic base is only 33% of the Democratic base has any faith in the Democratic Party. Sorry, only 28% of the Democratic base has faith in the Democratic Party. Only 33% of the Republican base has faith in the Republican Party. In other words, the moral of the story here is that the vast majority of working people across blue states and red states are infuriated with both the Democratic and Republican parties. And that same poll showed that 2/3 of people under the age of 30 are angry at both parties and they want a new party. And so that's the context in which we are running as an independent, anti-war, pro-worker, revolutionary socialist. We are the only campaign, I am the only candidate that is calling for, in this race, calling for an end to all military aid to the Israeli state, an end to weapons and tech for genocide and imperialist war. We're calling to stop the data centers and the AI-related mass layoffs. And in relation to that, I'm fighting for a living wage jobs guarantee by expanding the public sector massively, funded by taxing the rich. We're also fighting for, as you know, free healthcare for all, funded by taxing the rich, for national rent control, for a national $25 an hour minimum wage. These demands are extremely popular. And I'll just say one thing, Jen and Peter, that when we are canvassing throughout the district, which we do all the time, and as far as I can see, we're the only campaign that's canvassing and talking to ordinary people. Sometimes young people, especially, they're angry. They don't want to stop because they think that we might be a Democrat. And then we have to tell them, no, we're neither Democrats nor Republicans. This is an independent candidate. On top of that, this is a candidate who has an unparalleled track record of winning victories like the nation's highest minimum wage and the Amazon tax. That's when we get people's attention, because as you were referring to, Peter, people are so just disgusted by politics. And how could they not be? Because here you have both parties that are funding genocide, both parties that have in majorities created and funded ICE. And I'll just say both parties that have funded war funding by war spending to the tune of $1 trillion last year. And you saw what happened last week. Adam Smith cheerfully joining Mike Rogers. Adam Smith is the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. Mike Rogers is the Republican chair of the House Armed Services Committee. Both of them all gung-ho releasing the new war funding bill for $1 trillion more. And on top of that, an unprecedented, shocking escalation of weaponry, AI, cyber, biotech weaponry for Israel. I mean, this is just, it is psychopathic. And the only way to stop this juggernaut is to have a real shake-up, a political earthquake in the U.S. Congress, and our campaign represents that potential.
Kshama, does Congressman Smith is he intending to vote yes on this Section 224 addition to the National Defense Authorization Act?
Yeah, just to make sure your viewers know, the Section 224 that you're referring to is what I was talking about, the shocking escalation in weaponry for Israel and the more like an unprecedented fusing of U.S. military and Israeli military. Well, how could he not? It's his bill. He unveiled it. He unveiled it jointly with Mike Rogers. He unveiled it with Mike Rogers. And if he doesn't follow through, that will be a reflection of the pressure from below, from people's anger. And so if that does happen, you, all of us, and working class people, millions of us, we should take credit for it. And we should use that as an example of how actually mass pressure does work. But I don't see how he would not, because look, this is a guy who is being bankrolled and has been bankrolled by the Zionist lobby, by the billionaires of Palantir, Anduril, the billionaires like Alexander Karp, Joe Lonsdale, and a couple of others actually from Palantir, and the billionaires and multimillionaires of Anduril. These are all people who have donated money for Adam Smith's campaigns, but they are bipartisan donors. They are also funding Trump's war. So in other words, all of these wars are Trump's wars, and they are all bipartisan wars. And let's not forget that the genocide started under the Biden and the Democratic Party's leadership. So
Yes.
Adam Smith is, the truth is that Adam Smith is almost caricaturishly villainous. But what's scary about Adam Smith is not just Adam Smith himself, but the fact that the majority of the Democratic Party, for example, voted in December to give the $906 billion for war spending for Trump. The majority of the Democratic Party voted to give tens of billions of dollars for the genocide in Gaza. You know what I'm talking about. And that bill also included a ban on United Nations funding for food assistance to Gaza at a time when there were reports of catastrophic levels of mass starvation in Israel. And keep in mind, 173 Democrats voted to send tens of billions of dollars for the genocide, and it included 56 members of the so-called Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Oh, forget them, right? Like, they're ridiculous. I don't even know why. I don't even know why they bother.
No, I brought that up because that's the kind of that's a prime the so-called progressive Democrats, and I'm saying so-called very specifically because there's nothing progressive about what they do, but it is important for us to relentlessly explain to people, because the so-called progressive Democrats, they play a particular role, and that is the role of a gatekeeper, which is that purportedly they are on the side of working people. They are the people who will bring Medicare for all bills nominally but never bring them to a vote. They are the people who will sometimes vote against some of the most egregious war spending bills, but then vote for others. So if you look at their voting record, it's quite spotty. But the role of the so-called progressive Democrats is the most insidious role that we have to call out, which is their role is not to do progressive things. They have not done any progressive things. The minimum wage nationally is $7.25. There's nothing progressive that they have achieved at all. What they do, what is their real actual role, is to give people an illusion of debate within the Democratic and Republican Party, so that working people are permanently straitjacketed within this two-party system where both parties are parties of the capitalist class. And we have to have a breakthrough out of it. If I can just say one other thing, in terms of electoral politics, the reason we are running this campaign, we don't make we meaning my fellow revolutionary socialists and I, we don't make a dichotomy between electoral versus other strategies, because for us, the question is, what are the avenues available today for the working class to make the biggest breakthroughs possible and win the most breakthrough victories possible? Today, we are in this tragic situation where the labor leadership, the overwhelming majority of them anyway, I mean, there are exceptions to the rule, but the rule is that they are completely tied to business unionism, meaning labor leaders who just make their own careers. They make peace with the bosses, which means they also make peace with the bosses' parties. And you just saw the leadership of the Washington State Labor Council and the Washington Education Association just endorsed Adam Smith after having passed resolutions for Gaza ceasefire and all of that. They just endorsed Adam Smith. They didn't even invite me for a debate. They didn't invite me to speak to their membership, nothing. The leadership just rubber stamped Adam Smith. And so my point is that there are no avenues for breakthrough directly within the labor movement. We won the nation's highest minimum wage, not because the labor leadership led on it, but despite their gatekeeping against it. Because we had an elected office, we were able to independently mobilize rank and file union members and non-union workers. That is what we intend to do with the congressional position. It is not about electing one person. I'm not here to make my career. If I wanted to make a career, there are a million easier ways for me to go about it, much more peaceful ways for me to go about it. We are doing this because this is the only possible breakthrough we can win, and even that's going to be hard. So we need everybody's help.
So, and this is what I want to talk to you about, because we all know that, and we say it all the time, we're not voting our way out of this, right? We're in this sort of end of empire, fascist, oligarchic, apocalyptic nightmare. And obviously voting is not the only thing that we're going to be able to do. And as someone who has gone up against the corporatists, like to the point that you have, where do you think direct action falls into where we are now, especially when it comes to these data centers? because we're past being able to just like show up at commission meetings. And yes, it works every once in a while. And yes, there's breakthroughs, but I think it's not enough.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really important point, Jen, about that not being enough. But that also connects to why we are running for office and all of that. I mean, all of that is interconnected. But just starting from the point of data centers, yeah, I mean, first of all, it is absolutely inspiring how much unity there is actually in the working class. I mean, all the way from revolutionary socialists like ourselves and Mormon working people in Utah, all of us are against the data centers. I mean, it is aside from the support for healthcare, free healthcare, this is the other, aside from free healthcare and actually now opposition to the wars, which is also now an absolutely unifying issue. This is another unifying issue. 7 out of 10 Americans are opposed to data centers. I mean, there's huge anger. There's also a lot of fight back. Actually, Workers Strike Back, my own organization, our activists were involved actually in winning a victory against a data center that was proposed in Pekin, Illinois, which is a small city next to Peoria, Illinois. And that was a real victory. I mean, this is a state where the Democratic governor, billionaire J.B. Pritzker, he had already promised $1 billion of tax giveaways to the companies who, I mean, the billionaires who they get tax giveaways, and then they're also the ones who profit from the data center. So they get gifts 2 times over, and working people get screwed 2 times over, both from the taxes they have to pay because taxes are regressive in most states, and because of all the detrimental impact of data centers. And so these victories are crucial. But Jen, you made an important point, which is that we are not going to be, first of all, it's going to be hard to stop many of these data centers, even through direct action. It's going to be necessary, absolutely necessary. And we need, Workers Strike Back is very much, we just had a national meeting discussion on this to talk about how we won in Pekin and what we need to do. And we absolutely intend to really, launch a big campaign around this as well. However, it's not going to be enough. Why? Because if you look at the dollars that are involved, I mean, AI chip maker NVIDIA just became the world's first $5 trillion company, meaning their stock market valuation is at $5 trillion, and then you had OpenAI that could reach $1 trillion valuation sometime this year. And similarly, Microsoft and Apple have hit $4 trillion valuation. And then you have Meta and Oracle. I mean, we are talking about trillions of dollars at play here. And so there is no way, excuse my language, but there is no way in fuck these multi-billionaires and multi-millionaires are going to let go of easily. So you know what they will do? They will wait us out because they have the money and the time and the resources to wait us out. They're also going to take other steps, like some of the cities that have had the temerity to fight back against them. These companies are bringing lawsuits against them for stopping the data centers. So they will do a drip of punishing against anybody who goes up against it. So my position is, and our position is, that we absolutely need to build a nationwide movement to defeat every possible data center. And we need a coordinated movement of nonviolent civil disobedience and resistance against the data centers. But in addition to that, I'm sorry, but we need a fighter in Congress. We need a fighter in Congress on these issues and on every issue. And right now, we don't have any fighters in the US Congress. Everybody's a team player. And this is team genocide, team billionaire, team multimillionaire, team Israeli lobby. This is team AI and crypto. I don't want to belong to any of those teams. I am in team working class people who are fighting for a decent society, working class people who are fighting against the mass layoffs and the data centers, all of that. And so what we need is mass movements, coordinated mass movements that bring in hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people together on the streets, but not in the way that No Kings happened, where millions of people come, but it's as a safety valve. The Democratic Party controls the messaging, and those protests go nowhere. I'm talking about protests that will be led by revolutionary socialists and will actually create a real threat, a credible threat against the billionaires and multimillionaires. And that is what I have promised to do if we are elected. I have promised that if we are elected, I will turn, first of all, my congressional inauguration into a mass rally in Washington, D.C. of 10,000 people and immediately use my elected office to build the powerful movements. That is the whole point. I mean, imagine if we had 10 prominent labor leaders who were willing to use their profile and their base of millions of working people in order to actually mobilize for action. But they are not doing that. What happened in Minneapolis on January 23rd? The union leaderships were literally emailing their members saying, here's the language from the no strike clause of your union contract. You better not go on strike. Rather than organize a general strike, they're telling their members, don't go on strike. Don't have the courage to go on strike. This is an absolute dead end. I'm sorry, business unionism has been a complete death knell of the labor movement and movements generally. We need a breakthrough out of this.
Kshama, I think it is very important that people understand the difference between your race and Thomas Massey's race. The king of all kings decided to christen that race and make it very important to support that person. I don't think you have the same problem necessarily in your race, although Adam Smith will definitely have millions of dollars behind him from corporate special interests led by the Israel lobby. Are you finding, just based on, obviously this is a ground game campaign, no question about it, are you finding that there's a lot of disillusioned Democratic voters out there that are kind of tired of this and want to have a new path and are willing to entertain going the independent route at this point?
I think, that's again a very, very crucial question, especially as we head into the last 2 months of this primary. The primary is on August 4th. That's the first Tuesday of August. So I think there is this disconnect where, on the one hand, the vast majority of people, including in our district, are disgusted by the Democratic Party as they are by the Republican Party. And they want independent candidates. They want independent politics. They want people who are not going to be team players with these parties of the billionaires. But on the other hand, the complete contradiction that you have seen for years, and this is not a new thing, people have been angry for a while, but that contradicts completely with the 180-degree opposite fact, which is that the incumbency rate in Congress is very high. What that tells you is that people are angry, but they don't have alternatives that they can align with and that they can vote for. In this race, this time they do have an alternative. But yes, it is all about our canvassing, because not only is the corporate media carrying out a complete blackout, Jen and Peter, you know what I'm talking about. Even the supposedly progressive media, the podcasts don't cover us. You are one of the exceptions to the rule. There are a few that cover us, the rest don't. And the reason they don't is not coincidental. The reason they don't is that they can sound like they're critical of the Democratic Party, but at the end of the day, they are loyal to the Democratic Party, and they're never going to have me unless there's pressure on them. And so we have to combat that. That is what makes our job, our task, very difficult. And that is why I don't go around giving guarantees to people that we're going to win. I say that our demands are extremely popular. We have shown that we can win. I won every election of my 4 elections. And one of those, remember, was a recall attempt against me by Trump supporting corporate landlords. And the Democratic Party did not say a word against that recall attempt. But we defeated them as well. We were able to win victory after victory, including the Amazon tax and unprecedented renters' rights, despite having the vast majority of the labor leadership against us, and the Democratic Party, which obviously serves big business, does not, and billionaires, does not serve working people. So that's the kind of opposition we overcame. So we have shown that it's possible, but it also shows that it's an uphill task. It is a very, very difficult task. So I am serious when I say that I don't care where you are, whether you are in Blaine, Washington, or you are in Jacksonville, Florida. We need your help. If you agree with our message, if you are excited by the idea of having a fighter in Congress, one fighter that can actually turn the tables on the billionaire class, then we need your help. You absolutely should support us. That's why we have support from all across the nation.
And if I might add, the fact that you have raised over $500,000 at this point, you're now at $600,000. And I don't want to take anything away from any of the other candidates that are in this race, but let's be honest. It's you and it's Congressman Smith. That is who is going to be the top two candidates. Washington, as you know, guys, is one of 4 states in the union that has a jungle primary system, meaning that it doesn't matter what party you're in. You can be independent, Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. The top 2 go to the general. And so with that being said, you are not only a legitimate campaign, you will raise $1 million before the November election. So the idea that there are people that are not giving your campaign the credit that it deserves, especially since you're a legitimate candidate, you've been elected to city council, you have actually been a national figure in your, we'll just say, David versus Goliath, labor fights against Bezos. I think there really is something to be said for your campaign. And for anybody out there, especially in independent media, who is not even entertaining your campaign, just goes to show you how the reason so many people do the things that they do has nothing to do with a mission. It has to do with a career. First and
Here,
foremost.
Kshama, check it out. Check it out.
Well,
This is the updated. I need one to add some people, but I thought you might appreciate my Bezos rendering.
Well, of
And
course.
these are the people who need 400-foot yachts. I mean, I don't know if you saw, but right after Meta and Mark Zuckerberg laid off 8,000 workers, 1,400 of them in our area here, he had the nerve to bring his 400-foot yacht and park it at Lake Union. People were so angry. I mean, really.
His yacht has a yacht.
His yacht has a yacht. Yes, I talked about that too. His yacht has a yacht because a floating palace needs a floating garage as well. And, so our message is, look, that is Zuckerberg, and this is true for all billionaires. That is Zuckerberg giving a giant fuck you to the working class. I'm going to lay off 8,000 hardworking people, and then I'm going to park my ostentatious and absolutely super ugly super yacht right in your doorstep, right on your shores. And that is the kind of shamelessness they have. I mean, it's also capitalism as a system is a psychopathic system. It's a sociopathic system. It engenders that kind of sociopathic behavior from these billionaires whose wealth depends on continuing to exploit human beings, animals, and the natural resources. And so we need to give a giant fuck you back to the billionaires like Zuckerberg. And that is why this campaign is so crucial. And, Peter, you were saying that how the media and even the so-called progressive media are not covering our race, even though it is such a legitimate campaign. I would say that they're not covering because it's a legitimate campaign, meaning that we have shown that we can defeat the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and the billionaire class. We have shown that repeatedly, and they don't want to help us on the way there. And that is why you see them not covering us. That's why you also see labor leaders supporting Adam Smith. And quite frankly, the other Democrat that's running in this race, I mean, she literally said to a Democratic Party audience recently, I was there, she said, I'm a team player. It's like, you can rely on me. I will be a team player. My appeal to everybody watching this is we don't need more team players on team genocide, team billionaire, team Zionism. What we need is working class fighters in Congress who will not go there for careerist reasons. And I can hardly think of anybody who's not a careerist. And I'm not. And I'm not promoting our campaign because it is mine or ours. I am promoting this because tragically for the working class, this is the only campaign of this kind. And the work that we did in Seattle and the victories that we won tragically is the only example we can offer. I mean, contrast it to the hundreds of Democratic Socialists of America elected. They have not won anything substantial in comparison to ours. And then on top of that, you have AOC, who voted to break the railroad workers' strike, who voted for the Iron Dome, and who went to Munich, really sort of basically.
So wait, Kshama. So wait, you mean to tell me that Hassan Piker has not reached out to you to have you interviewed on his podcast? That hasn't happened yet?
No.
Yeah. Well, considering that Hassan is already touting AOC for president, you can see why.
God, she is just so out of her league with that. It's silly, and everybody can see it. It's ridiculous.